I am Marina Webster, your host for Inspiring Author TV, the only show that inspires authors to write and gives them tips and hints on how to write and publish their books. And today we are going to talk about poetry and publishing. And here we have a well-known Australian poet and publisher, Chris Mansell.
Hello.
So, welcome, Chris.
Thank you.
So, Chris, can you tell us what inspired you to write poetry in the first place? And just tell us about your books and what you do.
Certainly. Try and stop me. I started writing when I was about 14. I decided I was going to be a poet. This is not a very wise thing to do. You should really become a dentist, I feel, if you're going to do
Very different. Dentist and poet. It's like two opposites.
Exactly. But yes, and dentists make quite a lot of money and poets don't. But you know what it's like. If you're a writer, it's a vacation in a way. In a way, you can't help yourself, and I really love it. And there's a great richness to the art form that you can do it as a 14-year-old, and you can do it as a 58-year-old, and you're still discovering new things every time you pick up the pen or go to the screen. So I started writing then, and fortunately I've lost most of those early poems because they were very awful. I'm sure they were anyway. And then I studied economics at university because I thought I wanted to know how the world went. And in my mind, that was part of being a poet. Understanding how the world went and trying to work out, that was the thing that a poet does. And but after that I started to publish poems in magazines and that sort of thing in new poetry. I went along to a lot of readings and met poets. I think that's really important thing for poets, to meet other writers, to go to events.
Yeah, to get inspired from them and learn.
Sure, and just to make contacts, to make friends who are in the same business. I mean, a doctor would not think of not meeting up with other doctors. Of course you do.
For sure, yeah, for sure. So how many books have you written so far?
Well, that's always quite difficult to answer because I don't just write poetry, I write non-fiction and fiction and plays and all sorts of things. But I think poetry titles is about 9, mostly in Australia, 1 in the US. And some of them are bigger, but there's a whole lot of tiny little publications as well, like little pamphlets and things. So it's really hard to answer the question. That sounds weird, but this year I'm very excited because this one here, this is Spine Lingo. It's my new and selected poem. So that meant going through all of the poems, hundreds of poems, and selecting what I thought was worth preserving and throwing away a whole lot of others and ignoring them. So that was really quite a trauma in lots of ways to do that. So this year I've been going out doing readings, coming to Canberra doing readings, going to Melbourne doing readings, that sort of thing, to try and promote that. Because I think if you're going to be a poet, that's what you've got to do.
Doing readings and
doing readings.
Promotion for yourself.
Absolutely. There's no man in the Astrakhan coat and a big cigar who's going to come and say, oh, let me make you a star. It's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. So if you want to do that, you have to meet your colleagues. You have to get out there. You have to read other books, other literary magazines, that sort of thing. And if you don't, you can't expect to know what's going on.
Yes.
If you were that dentist we talked about a minute ago, you would read dental journals and go to conferences. It's the same as if you're a poet. You go to conferences, you get to know other people, you learn what you hate.
Right, yeah. Chris, can you tell us about how you publish your books?
Okay. This one here is published by Carteret Press, which has been going since the 70s out of Armidale, from the University of New England in Armidale. It's run by Tony Bennett, who's also a poet himself. And that's been going for a long time. They publish poetry and other things, but they specialise in poetry and academic publication. I have a little press. I call it the smallest press in the world. Smallest press in the known universe.
Right.
This is Press.
Okay, this is what you publish.
This one happens to be mine. I don't actually do a lot of mine, but There's so far I think I have 27, 28 titles, another 12 coming up.
Yes, it's a lot.
And they're small A6. You can put it in a pocket and you can do a reading.
Pocket books.
Literally pocketbooks, yeah. That old idea of a pocketbook, but call them chapbooks. And they're quite inexpensive, relatively speaking. And what I really enjoy with this publication thing is that because I'm the publisher, I can do what I like. So, for example, a friend of mine who's an associate professor of English in the University of Macau decided that he would like a chapbook, and he sent me something and I really liked it. And I said, yes, that'd be lovely. And he said, well, would you be interested in doing a parallel in Chinese? I said, oh, okay, fine, because he's got lots of expert translators under him. So we did one in Chinese. And then he said, what about Italian? And I said, okay. He said, and Portuguese? So I did a suite of them, 4 of them matching at the same time in Portuguese, Italian, Chinese and English.
Wow.
Now that is a really uneconomic proposition. I'm a publisher, I can do what I like.
So you actually can translate poetry from English to different languages.
Yeah.
And it sounds
well.
Sounds well.
It's always a problem. But Kit Kellen is involved in a translation project, so he has access to very high-level translators. But coming up, I'm so excited. A poet that I know, I was down at the Melbourne Writers' Festival flogging a book, and we were on a panel, and Javant read some work in a language called Polari, which is the homosexual cant language.
I've never heard of.
Yeah, exactly. But it was really interesting, and he has sent me translations of Rimbaud into English and Polari. So I'm going to publish that. What's the market for that? Oh, about this big. I don't care, because it's such an interesting thing to do. So really, I mean, if a poet who's approaching me as publisher rather than poet, if they've got a really interesting project, I'm all for it. Even though it might be sort of mad, I'm really happy. Rimbaud into Polari, it might sell 1 million, I've got no idea. But I'm willing to take the risk. So I think poets need to, well, I'm excited by poets who have a bit of spark and think about their art and think where they want to take their art and do what they want to do, rather than just the sort who write little grey squares and wait for glory or something. I don't know.
Yeah. So what actually poet can do? Like if poets write his or her poetry, they just can approach you and you just look at their poetry and you tell them if you published or not?
Sure.
Yeah?
Sure.
Yeah.
And I think people are quite shocked, you know. I mean, that's the way you approach any publisher. You send them your work and say, what do you reckon? But some people feel that you've got to have some sort of special magic or something. Well, the magic is write something good.
Yeah.
You know, if you don't write something good, people are not going to be interested in it.
Yeah. How can we do it with poetry? How can you write something good?
Well, be original.
Any secrets?
Be original, be precise, be unafraid. Be unafraid. Because if you're afraid, it comes out all grey and not very interesting.
Yeah, just be brave and just express your heart.
Yeah, your heart, your mind, your weirdness. If you want to do it graphically, do it graphically. You know, if you want to carve it on the face of matchsticks, do that, I don't care. But go with it. Because a lot of people, I run writing workshops as well. And I'm sure you've come across this phenomenon. People write something, it's very rough, and you say, okay, we've got to edit now. And they sit there and they cross out all the original stuff and leave all the cliches there. Of course, what you should do is the other way around.
Yes. Oh.
Yeah, because they're a bit afraid of seeming weird or unusual.
Yeah, think what other people think about them.
Yeah.
But it is irrelevant.
It's the opposite.
Yeah.
It's the opposite of what you should be doing.
Yeah.
And it's your responsibility to say that what you perceive is the truth.
Yeah. It's what you think is the matter. The first.
Exactly. Somebody else writes somebody else's books. Don't write them for them. Write your own book. So often I think the worst thing you can do in poetry is to be mediocre.
Right.
You can go too far that direction, too far that direction. That's okay. But mediocre is bad news, and I'll always reject mediocre. But I'll take a punt on the ones that are really risky. Like some of the other stuff I've done have just been graphical. Like they've not had so much word, they've had like arrangement of the letters and the concrete poems. Fine. I'm happy. Good. And I want to do some more mad adventurous stuff as well.
What sort of adventures?
Well, I would like to do, I do some digital poems as well, like I do sort of animation, text animation, and I would really like to do some more of that. And I would really like to do that on collections. Instead of having that, I'd have a DVD with a whole lot of animations on it. You know, I'd be quite happy with that. So if somebody came up with a proposal for that, and it was really good, I'd be thinking, yeah, okay, I can do that.
Wow,
you know.
So this is a good tip for someone, you know, approach Chris with great poetry.
Yeah, preferably with your best stuff. I always encourage people, particularly with the chapbooks, to buy at least one, for two reasons. One, they need to see what it is, because they're small, they're modest, you know. Two, the press needs to survive. And, you know, if you want a press to support you, at least a token of your support back is a good thing, because it takes, as you know, a lot of trouble to read a manuscript and carefully consider it. So, you know, people just send these things off without even realising.
So how much you sell these little books for?
They're $9.90.
$9.90. Yeah, really cheap. Yeah,
they're
really
really
affordable.
Cheap.
Yeah.
And people often buy packs of them. They'll buy 5 at a time or 3 at a time or something, which is nice.
Yeah.
I encourage that.
Yeah. Now, a few words I want to hear from you about marketing strategy and selling.
Oh, that's awesome.
How to make money for poets. Poor poets, they have to make money.
I told you, be a dentist.
But they want to be poets.
They do want to be poets. And I think getting out there is really important. You know, not putting them all under your bed. Nobody's going to buy them from under your bed. So you do actually need to get out there and do readings. You don't have to do performances. Some people are very performance poets. Just read, you know, hold Tupperware parties, you know, the equivalent of.
And sell from there.
So one at a time. Always have one in your handbag or in your bag. But make sure that you've sold into magazines. You
just contact magazines.
Contribute your poems to magazines. And you get a lot of rejections, but that doesn't matter. So people know your name.
That's right, yeah.
So when they see it, they think, oh, and they're more likely, we discussed names before, you know, people recognise the name, they're more likely to pick it up. And once they've picked it up, they're more likely to buy it. But they can buy them online as well. Because a lot of people, you know, they're just browsing around. And
So can you sell poetry online?
Sure, I do.
Like from your personal site, or you should use things like Amazon?
Well, for they go from the press site.
So it is your site,
my
like
site,
your
yeah.
book
My
online
publishing
bookshop.
site, yeah. And so there, for example, you can go on, you can read a sample, you can read the biog of the person, and you just click a button. And once you've clicked a button, you're sweet. And poets made a sale and they get to live.
Wow, wonderful. Oh, thank you so much, Chris,
Pleasure.
for this wonderful interview.
Lovely to meet you.
Yeah, lovely to meet you too. And I learned a lot from you. I learned so many tips and hints about writing poetry and publishing poetry. So
thank you. You're
thanks
very
for
kind.
being inspired also.